Hey guys, welcome back. It's Dave, and today we're going to continue looking back at the making of my very first feature film, Backlash, which we released in 1994. Today we're going to be looking at location scouting, one of the most crucial elements to making the film. So stick around. If you enjoyed this series, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends, and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to know what you're getting out of this and how we might improve this for the future so that we can help other young filmmakers. My goal here is to help you not make the same mistakes that I did. Making movies is hard, and if I can help you in any way through my experience, please let me know in the comments down below. Give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, come back for more. We're going to be looking at the entire making of Backlash all the way through distribution and ultimately how that led to my next projects. And maybe that can give you, as a young filmmaker or somebody who's interested in movies, a little insight into how the whole thing came together. And if you haven't seen parts 1 and 2 of this series, I highly recommend you go back and check it out. That'll give you a little flavor as to how we got to this point. But today we're going to look back at location scouting.
Here we are at, I have no idea where we are actually. We're somewhere between, where was it? Like Pearsonville and Barstow.
Jake and I are putting this whole thing together. I'm funding it with my own money. My wife and I, we would sign up for all these credit cards that they would send us in the mail, and we used those to finance the movie. Now, I'll just tell you this right up front. I broke one of the cardinal rules of independent filmmaking. Robert Rodriguez, in his book, Rebel Without a Crew, details his process of making his first film, El Mariachi. And here's one of the nuggets of wisdom that he dropped in that book that I wish I had listened to. He said, write to what you have available to you. Seems simple, right? I did not get that in my head. Robert, he had a guitar case, he had access to a bus, he had some guns, he had some friends, and he had access to this border town. So he wrote the movie around what he had access to. Jake and I wrote this road trip thriller that went all over the place. We had so many locations that we had to find, it wasn't even funny. And I had written in this gas station where they get towed and they have to have their car repaired. And then Tommy gets into a big fight with the guy who's running this place. And then ultimately Tommy ends up shooting the dude. And I am location scouting between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. And I am driving out every day to see if I can find a place. And I'm talking hours on the road, all right? Just looking, searching, finding anything we can. I'm going to every gas station, knocking on every door, talking to every manager. Hey, can we make a movie in your parking lot? Can we shoot outside in your gas station? No, 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 no. What are you talking about? Who are you? No. Get out of my face. No. How much money do you have? Yeah, that'll be $10,000. Yeah, that'll be $5,000. Sure, I can do it for you for $1,000 an hour. I don't have $1,000, period. Finally, this one day I'm driving out to Vegas, and on the right-hand side of the road, like a couple hundred yards off the road, I see this wall of tires. And it went for probably 100 yards before it turned, and it made a giant circle around this camp. And they had been set up so that they would block the view of what was inside this from the road and from any looky-loos passing by. And I didn't know until later why that was the case. So in my young, naive, like, we're going to make this happen kind of way, I'm like, wow, that looks really interesting. I'm going to go find out what's over there. So I pull off the road, and it's this little tiny dirt road out to this place. And I finally get out to this tire mecca. And where the tires came together, there was this little tiny entrance. And over the entrance was this big, giant plywood sign. And on it was spray painted this Confederate flag, a rattlesnake, 2 guns, and this sign that said, "Enter and die." So of course I'm like, this looks awesome. Let's go in. So I'm driving my little truck, my little Universal Studios shirt, and I go into this place, and there's all these junker cars, these used cars that are spread out like in a whole big line. Some didn't have hoods, some didn't have engines, some didn't have tires. And I'm like, man, this could be an amazing location. And there was this little shack about, I don't know, 20, 30 yards past the cars. And beyond that were these little like trailers, and there were little fifth wheels, and there were little campers, and they were spread out. So I get out, I walk up the porch, and I go to knock on the door, and I realize it's already open. And I hear coming from the inside of the house what sound like Goofy cartoons. So I said, hello? Nothing. And I hear somebody inside. They're rustling around and banging and clanging something. So I knock on the door. Well, you have to understand the keys were already hanging in the door. I knock on the door. It goes, opens a little bit. I'm like, oh boy. So again, I say, hello? And then I step back and I'm looking around at this place, and I'm just wondering who the heck lives here. And there's all these glass bottles, and there's old propane tanks, and it was just freaky. And then all of a sudden, the door flies open. This guy comes out, and he's full of grease. He's got hair down his back. He's like kind of crazy looking. He's got, big tooth missing. He's got a full-on mullet. He's wearing one of those shirts with the name on it. I still don't remember what the name was. And he looks at me and he goes, "What the hell do you want?" I'm like, I turn around and just for a second, my heart stopped. I'm like, okay, I'm going to die. But then I thought, no, I'm not. I'm going to make a movie. So I turned around and said, "Hi, my name's Dave. I'm just location scouting for a movie, and I'd love to talk to you about what it might take to shoot here." He looks at me up and down. Then he stops and he looks at my shirt where it said Universal Studios. And his intensity just changed in a second. He goes, "Y'all making a movie? Well, great, come on in." So he brings me inside, and we go inside this shack, and the thing is like something out of a time capsule. There are newspapers stacked to the ceiling. There's another busted down couch on the inside. And he says, you want to have a seat? You want something to drink? You want a beer?" So he disappears into the kitchen. He comes back with a couple of beers. I didn't want a beer. I look in the kitchen, and there's dishes just piled high. And so I don't really sit. I just kind of stand there while he's doing his thing. And I turn around and I look, and there indeed is a black and white TV, half fuzzy between channels, and it's playing black and white Goofy reruns. And then he comes back and he says, "So what else you need? What do you want? What can we do for you? What can we get you? You want a rattlesnake?" And he pulls back the door. He closes the door, and behind the door there is a Sparkletts water bottle with a bunch of holes that had been shot in it, duct tape over the top of it. And inside, he holds up the bottle, and there is a live rattlesnake on the inside of this bottle. And he goes, "Seriously, you want to put it in a movie?" And he goes, "Thoom," and the rattle goes, this poor snake is in this bottle behind this guy's door. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe. I'm like, what did I step into? And it wasn't until after I saw Breaking Bad I realized maybe that wasn't such a smart idea. But it all turned out because the guy was so friendly. As soon as he knew we were making a movie, he was all in. So he walks outside and he goes, hey, everybody, come meet Dave. He's making a movie. We're going to help him out." And one by one, all these guys started coming out of their trailers, and they were everybody you would expect. There was a little guy with the white beard and coming up and what's all the noise about? And then there were other guys that were real skeptical coming out. He's like, "Hey, everybody, Dave's going to make a movie and we're going to help him out, okay?" And they're all like, "Oh, okay. What do you need? You need an Uzi? We got an Uzi. Hey, you want to jump a car into the canal? We can do that. Oh, you know what? Even better, we got some ether in the back. You want to blow up a car? We can blow up a car. That'd look great on the film." And all of a sudden I had like a whole bunch of people wanting to help us out making the movie. And so that's where we ended up shooting the scene. Now it's crazy because when you make a movie, you don't necessarily shoot it all in the same places, right? In fact, multiple locations can act like the same location. I remember we needed this great establishing shot to go from the highway where we had busted down to bringing our characters into this meth lab tire city. And we found that location in a place called Pearsonville, California. Now, Pearsonville is known as the hubcap capital of the world. And it is a little tiny place about halfway up the 395, which is a highway that goes from Los Angeles all the way up to Reno, Nevada. But the problem was when we got there, Caltrans started ripping up the road right where we were shooting. And then the winds picked up and then all kinds of other things happened. It was just an absolute disaster. In fact, we had this giant silk that the wind picked up along with its high stand, and it just destroyed all of our lights. I mean, it picked it up like a kite, and that whole thing just came and said, okay, where's your most expensive lights? I see you guys have all your HMIs lined up in a row. Ha ha, I'm gonna take them out. And it just plowed through all of our lights, broke our mirrors, broke our stands, broke everything. And that's when I was introduced to the concept of loss and damaged. And if you don't know what L&D is, you have to figure that out before you make your film, not after. Because L&D is potentially one of the largest costs on your movie. So if you choose your locations wisely, you will choose locations where Caltrans doesn't show up in the middle of your shoot and where the wind doesn't pick up in the middle of the afternoon and destroy your entire set. I remember being there, and when the wind picked up in the afternoon and the lighting wasn't matching and all the tractors were there and the big beep, beep, beeps from all the Caltrans trucks and everything else, and we were rolling film, and I was spending so much money every time we had a foot of film go through that camera, and finally I broke. When that silk picked up and it destroyed all of our lights, I snapped. And I went over to the camera and I opened it up and I ripped the film out in front of everybody, and I'm like, that's a wrap. Oh, man. Some of these memories are so indelible. It feels like they happened yesterday, because the effort from everybody that went into making this movie, only about 10% of that shows up on the actual film. It seemed like every single shot had some behind the invisible curtain man opposing us, saying, no, you will not get this shot. I dare you to overcome the challenges to get this done. And here's the thing, that is making movies. Plain and simple. It is challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge. Nothing comes easy. Nothing comes easy. So if you're setting out to make a movie, especially if you're doing it independently with friends and maybe your own money, you have to understand the level of sweat equity that you're going to have to put in to pull these things off. I'll give you another story about location scouting, okay? We wanted to find a place that we could express Tommy's desire for thrills. So what were we gonna do? We're like, okay, well, he could be riding a motorcycle, or he could be skydiving, but we didn't have the money for that. So we're like, oh, I know, bungee jumping. We'll have Tommy bungee jump, and that'll be the opening of the movie. So we needed a place where Tommy could bungee jump. Now, we didn't want to go pay a bunch of money and just have him do it at some commercial place, right? That would be boring and it wouldn't look good. So what did we decide to do? We're going to go find a bridge to throw Tommy from. We needed to find a bridge that was high enough and out of the way enough that we could bungee jump without permits. So I called my friend Rob and I'm like, Rob, do you know anybody who does any kind of bungee jumping? And he's like, well, I think I got a friend who knows a guy. And so we had a friend who knew a guy who bungee jumped. And so we're like, yeah, come on, let's do it. Where can we do this? And he's like, well, there's a bridge in Northern California. We can go shoot up there.
As you can see, the bridge itself is very cool. 110-foot dive, about 6 feet of water underneath. So if anybody does smack, might be able to pull them out of the river downstream. We'll see.
And if we do it on a Sunday, nobody's around. And if we do it really smart, we'll have guys on both sides of the bridge with walkie-talkies so that they can tell us when traffic's coming. And then when nobody's around, we'll run onto the bridge, we'll hook up the bungee jump real quick, and then we'll just roll cameras and you throw the guy off. And we're like, hey, sounds great, let's do that. And I look back on that and I'm like, how stupid do you have to be to jump illegally from a bridge? There's a big sign on the bridge that says no jumping or diving from bridge, PG&E. And then we needed the finale. And the finale in the script took place in this cabin out in the woods on a lake. And we're like, okay, well, where are we gonna find that? Originally we thought maybe in Big Bear or someplace around LA. And then a friend of ours offered their family cabin up at Lake Tahoe.
Got enough beds to sleep, probably 10. Got 2 there. 2 here, it's 4, we got 8, I believe 8 downstairs, no, 6.
4 downstairs.
4 downstairs, so we can sleep 8 in beds, 9 on the couch.
Couch is comfortable.
And then a bunch of people on the floor. Stairway goes downstairs, obviously. And the porch, very important.
Their family was generous enough to let us use their cabin in Lake Tahoe, which was right on the water, for 11 days while we shot everything we needed to shoot up there, and the whole finale of the movie, basically act 3 of the movie, all of it takes place in Lake Tahoe. And if you're a family, it's awesome. If you're a family of 17 filmmakers, all having to sleep together in this whole big cabin, some people on the floor, some people in bed, some people out on the porch, man, it got tight, but it worked. And we had this place down on the dock where we shot all these beautiful shots, but then ultimately where the cops show up and we have this big finale out on the porch. In fact, we stationed Jake down below to pretend like he was the cop looking up, pointing his gun. We found a 2x4 or something nearby. And we would work out all these camera angles on our VHS just to figure out, does this location work? If you're location scouting, take your camera, take your iPhone, figure out the actual lens that you want to use, figure out the time of day, figure out the lighting, figure out all this stuff so you don't have to do it on the day. That kind of pre-production work, that kind of thinking ahead and planning things out will save your butt. Because when you get up there, there's going to be a million different things you have to think about that you never anticipated for. Okay? In our case, actors didn't show up, and we had to rewrite the entire ending of the movie. I remember later on, there's miscommunication that happens. I remember when we were there, I left a note on the neighbor's door. Said, "Hi, we're in town shooting pickups for a movie." They thought we were firing guns at pickup trucks. Shooting pickups for the movie, right? And so they freaked out and they called the cops on us. Well, it actually wasn't too far from the truth because we were firing guns, just that's a different story, okay? I will tell you about the run-in that I had with the police with a truck full of non-permitted actual firearms. I mean, I'm talking handguns, rifles. We had a NATO-authorized sniper rifle in the back of my truck underneath the little carpet kit. And he's pulling me over for a busted taillight. And I'm like, please don't look in the back. Please don't look in the back. Please don't look in the back. There were so many other locations that we had on this movie. We had gas stations. We had mini marts. We had places that we need to have the truck breakdown. We needed to have the ranger station. We needed to have the house where Alicia was, which my cousin kindly offered, her actual home up in La Cañada. Here's a little tip. Don't let anybody shoot in your house, okay? Film crews, no matter what they say, will come in and they will destroy your home. Something inevitably will get busted, all right? Now, they were kind enough to let us film, and the scratches on the walls or on the floors or whatever else we did, they were so gracious to let us film. Diane, thank you so much still to this day for letting us film in your house. And Parker family, thank you so much for letting us film in your cabin. We did our best to leave it as good or better than we found it. I'm sure we didn't succeed, but you guys were so great. And I want to say, however many years it's been later, 20 some odd years later, thank you for your kindness and your generosity. And if you're setting out to make a movie and you're trying to find locations for your movie, here's what I suggest. Go back to your script and ask, do I really need this? Can I rewrite the script in such a way to make it smaller, to make it closer to home? Can we combine scenes? Can I write to what I have available to me? Ultimately, we shot 44 days over, I don't know, it was probably 35 different locations for Backlash. We went all over the place. Well, every time you do that, you spend money on food, on lodging, on gas, on wear and tear on your crew, on just, there are so many things that you end up spending money on anytime you have to leave your actual home, okay, and the actual base from where you're filming. So we did it in a crazy way. I would never recommend anybody doing it that way. Don't try to make a road movie unless you're doing like Gareth Edwards did with Monsters. And if you haven't seen that, go check it out. He did that. He got like 5 people in a van and he went all the way up Mexico, from the peninsula all the way up Mexico, and they would film as they had opportunity. They would jump out of the van and they would ask people, hey, can we film? And they made this road trip movie because they only had 2 people in the cast. And they had a group of crazy bonsai people with them where they would absolutely do this road trip and they would just find permission along the way. That's how you can do a road trip. But not with a crew of 15, 16, 17 people like we amassed. We tried to do a Hollywood-style production on a credit card budget. That I don't recommend. And the reason I did that is because I didn't know any better. I was learning as I went. So please use this as an opportunity to learn from my mistakes. If you're setting out to make your own movie for the first time, write to what you have available to you. Take the Robert Rodriguez route, not the Dave DeVos route, okay? Because ultimately, even though we did sell the movie into some foreign territories, we never saw any of it. The distributor took it all. And so we were stuck with having to pay off $75,000 in credit card bills. And that's when I learned how to edit, and I went to work, and it took me 3 years to pay off the money that we spent to make Backlash. Those were some painful years, let me tell you, full of regret and looking back and saying, why did I do it that way? And yet, as Jake will be quick to remind me, dude, look at what you learned. Look at what you learned. Look at the time we had. Look at the bonds we made. Look at the thing we accomplished. And he's absolutely right. Now, would I do it again? Yes, actually I would, but not in the same way. Location scouting, super important. But ask yourself, do I really need to be here?
This is the first time I've ever done a road movie. It's phenomenal, the amount of work that's involved in a road movie. I had no idea that it would be this much work.
Speaking of work.
But come back next week because we're going to be talking about our very first day of production, January 17th, 1994. You want to know how I remember that date so clearly? That's the date of the Northridge earthquake. Our very first location was destroyed. I'll tell you about that next time. I'll talk to you soon.